The role of gaming is not to be taken lightly, and the same of course might be said for meme and selfie production and reception. For this reason, it has itself become something of a battlefield over who we are and who we want to become as a society. One man who saw the potential of online gaming and tried to cash in was Steve Bannon. The former White House chief strategist and executive chairman of right-wing online newspaper Breitbart was for 4 years CEO of Affinity Media, formerly Internet Gaming Entertainment, a company that employed players of games such as World of Warcraft to farming game treasures and rewards through gameplay, that were then sold to other players. If evidence were needed that gaming tends to take on the character of real-world exploitation, a large number of non-Western players were engaged by Bannon to work for low wages playing games so that they could win goodies that were then sold for huge profits to Western gamers, with the money going to financial investors. As a major shareholder in Affinity Media, Bannon had earlier convinced Goldman Sachs, where he formerly worked, to invest $60 million in the company, though its fortunes took a dive amidst a high-profile lawsuit taken out by a disgruntled gamer, Antonio Hernandez of Florida, in May of 2007. Hernandez was fed up with the gaming experience being ruined by speculators who diluted the gaming quality by allowing novice gamers to spoil the gameplay. This added to a drop in revenue as Blizzard, the service that hosted World of Warcraft, had since 2006 been clamping down heavily on both the farming and selling of gaming loot. In any case, Bannon saw a potential army of right-wing acolytes in the millions of disaffected white males who gamed, even if a great many global players were actually non-American, and often non-white. Becoming executive chair of Breitbart News in 2012, Bannon sought to harness the monster power of the ruthless white male by appointing one Milo Yiannopoulos, better known simply as Milo, as head of the site's tech section, which featured a heavy emphasis on gaming and social media. Given the moral conservatism of Milo, a central figure of the alt-right, and his opposition to feminism, this appointment helped embroil Breitbart in a series of feuds and harassments that would come to be known as Gamergate and which revolved around a disdain for women in the gaming industry. It seems clear that Bannon wants to control technologies that might otherwise present hitherto unimagined levels of freedom of expression for the individual. In Adornian terms, his mistake is to try to identify and control phenomena around him, in keeping with the authoritarian tendency that is inherent in false identity thinking. Who knows what could happen instead if the still gargantuan power of the US recognized in each young citizen a potential indie developer, with the capacity to produce games with greater levels of choice and ever more advanced facilities for fostering community. This can only happen if the wide-open posture of youth and young adulthood is seen as providing opportunity for growth, not exploitation.
For Jordan Peterson, psychologist and ostensibly unwitting new darling of the alt-right, if gaming has any positive potential, it resides in it providing challenges set within rule systems which help to develop skills that are transferable within the wider world. Such a careers advisor mentality misses the potential of free and open play in developing new paths of personal development and social interaction. It also misunderstands the basic rewards of gaming, which do not necessarily come from the fulfillment of tasks and goals inscribed within frameworks of rules that mimic real-world legislation. Yes, games do have rules, though one rarely ever plays them to hone adherence to rule systems. Indeed, that would run entirely against the rationale of play, which requires a loss of consciousness of imperatives and restrictions. Arguably, absorption in the moment is the real prize of gaming, and this could not be more at odds with Peterson's injunctions laid down to the millennial as he implores them to grasp the weight of history and myth. Peterson's mistake here can be most clearly elucidated by looking to his one mention of Adorno in his 12 Rules of Life, Chapter 7, in which the reader is advised to pursue what is meaningful, not what is expedient. In the chapter, Peterson explores the darkness of the human soul, arguing that we need to take personal responsibility for our comfort, accepting all that is wrong, or right, in human existence, and then going on to create meaning in life one small step at a time, by alleviating small discomforts and unnecessary evils. Such advice for living is of course sound to an extent, even if it differs little with the innumerable self-help books that have for decades jostled with the philosophy sections of our bookstores for shelf space. It is not the practical advice that Peterson gives around a good sense in keeping a daily routine or in tidying one's bedroom that I personally take issue with. It is the worldview that underpins Peterson's advice that renders it suspect. Peterson argues that meaning is provided by a balance between chaos and order, yet such thinking always comes from the purview of an order which has already deemed itself superior to chaos, otherwise there would be no grounds to ever assume the possibility of a balance in the first place. That we should do what is meaningful, not what is expedient, assumes that keeping a daily routine that includes tidying your room and doing good deeds for strangers can intervene at a metaphysical level to temper the disorder of existence itself. For Adorno, it is precisely such moralizing that leads to tyranny for its arrogant assumptions that there is an order that can be instilled upon nature. Rather, that order is a human fallacy that exists alongside myriad other factors within nature. If this all seems rather far from gaming, it is worth asking what kind of gamer one wants to be? One who rigidly adheres to rules at the expense of gameplay? Or one capable of inventing new games from old ones through a process of creative reinterpretation? And imagine what tools the latter approach would give to our youngest generations. Here it may be worth visiting the millennia-old game of chess, which is rigid with rules passed down from generations. It is, without doubt, a great game for honing one's strategy, as Peterson would surely agree. Though it is singularly useless in the teaching of genuine cunning or creativity. Indeed, there are people who will never enjoy chess so long as they don't get to change the rules as they go along. These are the people that introduce Star Wars or Lego figurines onto the board just as they sense loss, or who at some point send the whole board hurtling through the air, only to rearrange the pieces on the board's blank underside. And in many ways these people have every reason to behave as they do when faced with a game that is fundamentally untruthful in respect of the conditions of life. Who can deny that there is truth in the underside of the chessboard? I see 21st century aesthetics as occupying that underside and the millennial as the master of its gameplay.